Although Maze Runner was born in the books, many first discovered it through the movies. Thomas, a boy with no memory, trapped in a deadly maze, fights to survive alongside a group of boys. But the story we saw on screen was incomplete, and millions still don't know the real ending. Today, we'll reveal what the books The Maze Runner, The Scorch Trials, and The Death Cure actually told. This is the true ending of Maze Runner, just as James Dashner wrote it. Thomas wakes up inside a metal box that's slowly rising. He remembers nothing except his name. The screech of steel and the suffocating darkness close in on him, while an inexplicable dread takes hold. Without knowing it, he's part of an experiment controlled by the creators, a scientific organization that subjects teenagers to extreme tests in artificial environments to study their behavior and memory. When the doors above finally open, the light reveals the Glade, a closed-off community inhabited by boys known as the Gladers. They live in a village-like setting surrounded by towering walls, with no memory of their past or explanation of why they're there. Each one has a role to keep order: cooks, builders, leaders, and the bravest of all, the runners. Their job is to explore the maze that surrounds the Glade, a deadly puzzle that shifts every night and is inhabited by grievers, monstrous creatures, half machine and half beast, attacking without mercy. Every month, a new boy arrives in the lift, along with supplies, keeping the cycle alive. But Thomas's arrival breaks that balance. In the Glade, he meets Albie, the firm but weary leader; Newt, his calm and thoughtful second-in-command; Gally, hostile and suspicious; and Chuck, a cheerful boy who quickly becomes his first friend. He also meets Minho, the leader of the runners, whose bravery and experience immediately spark Thomas's curiosity. The grievers are the greatest threat. Their sting triggers the changing, a painful process that warps the mind and brings back fragmented memories. This phenomenon, designed by the creators, seems intended to draw out hidden knowledge buried in the boys' minds. The next day, something unprecedented shakes the Glade. A girl arrives. Teresa, the first and only girl to ever appear. Her message, "Everything is going to change," feels like a warning before she collapses into a coma. Thomas feels an instant connection to her, as if their fates were tied together. Later, it's revealed that they share a telepathic link, possibly implanted by the creators as part of their special abilities. Determined to uncover the truth, Thomas wants to become a runner. But when Ben, a boy driven mad by the changing, attacks him claiming to recognize him and insisting he's connected to the creators, Albie wastes no time in banishing him. Suspicion grows around Thomas, but so does his determination. His courage is tested when Albie is stung by a griever inside the maze. Minho tries to save him, but gets trapped. Breaking the rules, Thomas runs into the maze to help them. Against all odds, the three survive the night, something no one had ever done before. This makes Thomas a hero to some, but to Gally, it's proof he must be a spy. After spending a day in the Glade's jail, Thomas begins his training as a runner. The ever-shifting maze is a maddening puzzle. Meanwhile, Teresa, still unconscious, speaks to Thomas telepathically, revealing that they both helped design the maze alongside the creators. The truth shakes him. He runs into the maze, but he can't ignore the pieces that are beginning to fall into place. Suddenly, the sun disappears and the sky turns gray. The Glade is nothing more than a simulation controlled by the creators. Teresa wakes up and confirms that the maze hides a code. Then, chaos erupts when the maze doors stop closing at night. The grievers swarm into the Glade, and Gally, after a dramatic return, warns that one of them will die every night. The Gladers' maps of the maze are burned, but they were decoys. With Teresa's help, Thomas studies the real ones and discovers hidden words, a code that might be the way out. In a desperate move, he allows himself to be stung by a griever to recover his memories. He survives the changing and confirms the truth. He and Teresa were forced to work with the creators. The way out lies at a cliff, an optical illusion hiding the grievers' secret entrance. Thomas leads the Gladers in a final battle. Many die, but he, Teresa, and Chuck manage to enter the code and shut the maze down. A door opens, leading them into a bunker where the creators watch from behind a glass wall. A woman congratulates them, but Gally, under some mysterious influence, suddenly tries to kill Thomas. Chuck sacrifices himself to save him, leaving Thomas devastated. A group of rescuers storms in, kills the woman, and rushes the survivors into a bus under the pouring rain. A scarred woman tells Thomas he must help save humanity from the flare, a neurodegenerative disease that spread after solar flares devastated the world. In a shelter with food and beds, the Gladers feel a glimmer of hope. But a memo from Paige, the project's leader, reveals the truth. Everything was part of an experiment to find young people immune to the flare, but the fight has only just begun. The Scorch Trials. Thomas wakes up in a dormitory, believing he has escaped the maze. But the calm doesn't last. The nightmares continue, and his telepathic connection with Teresa, a gift they shared even before the maze, has vanished. Soon, the Gladers discover their supposed rescuers dead, and an enigmatic man appears, the Rat Man, a representative of Wicked, the organization behind the experiment trapping them. Wicked, short for World in Catastrophe Kill Zone Experiment Department, is searching for a cure to the flare, a disease that consumes the mind and turns the infected into cranks, violent and deranged beings stripped of their humanity. Although most of the Gladers are immune to the flare, Wicked imposes a new trial. They must cross a scorching desert within 2 weeks. This deadline is no coincidence. It's part of the experiment to measure their physical, emotional, and mental endurance under extreme pressure. If they succeed, they'll supposedly receive the cure and their freedom. Led by Minho, the Gladers set out on a journey where survival and truth intertwine at every step. They enter a dark tunnel, guided by Minho's steady voice. A chilling whisper warns them to turn back, but there's no escape. Suddenly, a metallic sphere, one of Wicked's deadly tests, attacks, decapitating a boy and replacing his head with a lethal device. Panic erupts, yet determination pushes them forward. After climbing a staircase into blinding light, the desert is revealed. A barren, merciless wasteland riddled with invisible traps, where every step tests their courage. As they approach a ruined city, the Gladers encounter 2 cranks, humans in the early stages of the flare. Though still partially sane, they bear the scars of the disease. They warn the Gladers about another group, Group B, a team of girls also caught in the experiment and ordered to kill them. Cautious, yet resolute, Minho leads the boys into the city in search of food and water. The presence of the cranks, caught between humanity and monster, leaves the Gladers questioning who is truly friend or foe in this broken world. A violent storm strikes near the city, with lightning crashing down like blades. Thomas and Minho fight to find shelter, but not everyone survives. Winston is struck dead by a bolt of lightning. The storm mirrors the chaos of their world, and the shaken Gladers take refuge in a crumbling building. The weight of death and uncertainty forces them to regroup, knowing the city hides even more dangers. Thomas, alongside Brenda, a crank in the early stages who still retains her sanity, explores the underneath, a network of tunnels beneath the city where some of the infected struggle to survive in makeshift communities. This underground refuge houses cranks who haven't completely lost themselves yet. Brenda shares the story of a world devastated by solar flares and the flare virus, which drove many into madness. Her knowledge is key to survival, but the underneath is full of shadows and threats. Thomas must reunite with the other Gladers while avoiding fully lost cranks whose humanity is long gone. He negotiates with Jorge, the leader of the underneath cranks, for safe passage in exchange for the promise of a cure. Tensions flare when Minho challenges Jorge, but Thomas manages to outwit him and secure their alliance. Still, their fragile partnership with Jorge and Brenda could turn fatal with a single wrong move. but it's the only way to cross the city and reach the safe haven. Betrayal strikes when Teresa and Group B capture Thomas. Manipulated by Wicked, Teresa drags him into the desert, where he is beaten and humiliated. Confused by her apparent betrayal, Thomas learns that the girls themselves are conflicted about their orders. After a tense standoff, they ultimately decide not to kill him. Yet the distrust toward Teresa grows, leaving Thomas torn between his past with her and his loyalty to the Gladers. When they reach the supposed safe haven, all they find is a lone pole planted in the sand. Suddenly, underground pods, Wicked's hidden devices, activate, unleashing biomechanical creatures designed to kill. These monsters have glowing bulbs as weak points, and their attack turns the haven into a death trap. The Gladers and Group B are forced to fight side by side against them in the middle of a raging storm, losing more comrades. In the chaos, Thomas leads a desperate sprint toward a berg, Wicked's flying ship, that arrives as their only salvation. They manage to board just in time, but safety is an illusion. On board, the Ratman promises them the cure and explains that the trials are designed to study brain patterns that might lead to stopping the flare. Fed up with the manipulation, Thomas demands answers, but only receives evasions. Soon, the boys discover tattoos branded onto their necks by WICKED, each assigning them psychological roles within the experiment. Minho is labeled the leader, Teresa the betrayer, and Thomas, though not revealed outright at this point, carries one that ties him to the group's control. These tattoos tighten Wicked's psychological grip on them. Thomas's fragmented memories reveal that he and Teresa once worked with Wicked before the maze, but he still doesn't understand why. His relationship with Teresa fractures further, while his bond with Brenda grows stronger. At Wicked's headquarters, the Ratman insists that everything will soon make sense, but Thomas doesn't trust him. Along with the Gladers and Eris, a boy from Group B who also survived a parallel maze, they face an uncertain future. A memo reveals that they are part of a larger experiment meant to save humanity from the flare, but every answer only sparks more questions. As they rest in the dormitory, Thomas clings to hope, determined to resist and uncover the truth, knowing the trials are far from over. After escaping the maze of deadly traps and creatures, surviving the scorching desert trials, and crossing a devastated wasteland, Thomas finds himself locked inside a white room, isolated after completing the Scorch Trials, with the news that he might be infected with the flare. The weight of everything he's endured presses down on him, but the confinement doesn't last forever. After 26 days of isolation, Thomas is released by Wicked. The Ratman, the same shadowy spokesman from the desert, brings him to reunite with the other Gladers. It should be a moment of relief, but it's overshadowed by distrust. Wicked announces plans to restore their memories, blocked since before the maze, stirring mixed emotions. While most are eager to recover their past, Thomas, Minho, and Newt, scarred by Wicked's lies, refuse. Then comes a devastating blow: the revelation that Newt is not immune to the flare, a secret Wicked had kept hidden, planting fear and sorrow among them. Determined not to undergo the surgery to recover their memories, the three friends attempt to resist, but they are separated and taken to individual operating rooms. Tension builds. How far can Thomas trust an organization that has manipulated them time and again? Inside the operating room, Thomas is reunited with Brenda. Shocked, he discovers she works for WICKED, though her distaste for the organization and her secret role as a double agent make her an unexpected ally. Brenda helps Thomas escape, and together they free Minho and Newt. Their escape is full of explosions and narrow escapes, ending in the hangar where Jorge awaits with a berg, an airship. Together they fly to Denver, where the rest of the Gladers, including Teresa, are supposed to be. But Newt's illness begins to worsen, forcing him to remain on the ship, adding urgency and heartbreak to Thomas's mission. In Denver, everything grows more complicated. Thomas receives a note from Gally, the boy who killed Chuck back in the maze, asking for a meeting. Though it reopens old wounds, Thomas, along with Minho, Brenda, and Jorge, decides to go. Gally reveals that he is part of the Right Arm, a rebel group dedicated to destroying WICKED. This sparks a glimmer of hope. Perhaps they are not alone in their fight. But before joining the Right Arm, they must remove the tracking chips implanted by Wicked, devices that not only track them, but also manipulate their behavior. Hans, a doctor in Denver, agrees to extract them, but the procedure turns chaotic when Wicked tries to control Thomas, unleashing a violent scene where his friends must restrain him. Once the chips are removed, the group feels relief, but it doesn't last. An encounter with a government officer addicted to bliss, a drug that slows the flare but breeds dependency, leads to Thomas being taken hostage. The crisis ends abruptly when a Wicked-controlled machine kills the captor, but the Rat Man reappears with an ultimatum. Thomas must return to Wicked to complete the cure, or Newt will face a grim fate. This forces the group back to the Burg, only to discover that Newt has been taken to the Crank Palace, a place where the infected are abandoned to die. Their search for Newt there is heartbreaking. When they find him, the disease has consumed him, and he lashes out violently, threatening them with a weapon. With no choice, Thomas and Minho are forced to abandon him, carrying a deep sorrow as they leave their fading friend behind. Back on the Burg, the group is captured by members of the Right Arm, causing confusion, since they were supposed to be allies. After a mutiny led by Thomas and Minho, they reunite with other Gladers, including Teresa, and learn that the capture was part of a plan to infiltrate Wicked's headquarters. The Right Arm's leader, Vince, reveals they need Thomas for the mission. But tragedy strikes again. Thomas finds Newt, now completely overtaken by the flare. In a moment of desperation, Newt begs Thomas to end his life. With a shattered heart, Thomas pulls the trigger, losing his friend but finding the strength to press on. Inside Wicked's headquarters, Thomas discovers that he is the final candidate, and the organization plans to use his brain to save humanity. Refusing to be sacrificed, he plants a device to disable Wicked's weapons, allowing the Right Arm to infiltrate. Amid the chaos, a note from Chancellor Ava Paige reveals she has shut down the operation and instructs Thomas to free the immunes and escape through a flat trans, a portal to another world. As Wicked's base collapses, Thomas and his friends return to the maze, rescuing nearly 200 immunes and fighting off grievers, losing more of their friends before finally defeating the beasts. During the escape, Janson, the Rat Man, attacks, but Thomas kills him. Yet tragedy strikes once more. Teresa sacrifices herself to save Thomas from falling debris. At last, the survivors step through the flat trans and emerge into a lush paradise, an untouched land of peace, oceans, and hope. Thomas and Brenda, now closer than ever, share a kiss that seals their bond, leaving behind the pain of their losses. The epilogue reveals that this paradise was Wicked's Plan B. When the cure failed, they chose instead to preserve the immunes to restart humanity. Though their methods were cruel, their mission succeeded. Thomas and the Gladers begin a new life, scarred by everything they endured, yet carrying the hope of a brighter future. Let me know in the comments which other unfinished movie or saga you'd like to see the ending of. And if you enjoy this kind of content, the best way to support us is by leaving a like and subscribing. See you in the next video.